Legendstrasse had shed the biomass she had harvested at Kazeo. Still, she moved faster than a space marine. She snapped out of range, leaping from the lectern and rolling to a halt by one of the great bookcases. Lysander's hammer shattered the lectern and threw the book to the floor, where it flapped wetly and squealed like a wounded creature. "Do not presume to know my mind," shouted Lysander. "A mere man might give up on Opus and on your death. A space marine knows his duty." "Duty above all," said Legendstrasse, stalking to the side as she and Lysander encircled one another. "Duty above honor? Duty above humanity. You would burn the galaxy to win. I seek only survival. You will not find it here." Lysander ran at Legendstrasse again. This time he ducked to one side as he hit, slamming the bookcase and wrenching it down over Legendstrasse. The bookcase crashed on her, tons of books sprawling across the mosaic floor. Legendstrasse tore her way out through the back of the bookcase, talons of bloody bone protruding from her fingers. Bolter shots thumped into her torso. Brother Mortz of Squad Kirav reached the library level. Barros was just beside him, Lightning Claw activated. Legendstrasse ran at Barros. She dropped to the floor and skidded underneath the swipe of Barros's claw. The power field rippled centimeters over his head. Then she jumped to the feet in front of Mortz and punched her claws through his stomach. Lysander ran after her. Mortz seemed to die in slow action, every drop of blood arcing lazily through the air as Legendstrasse tore her claws out and took the contents of Mortz's abdomen with it. She tore the ceramide of his armor as easily as his skin. Barros aimed a thrust of his claw at the back of Legendstrasse's head. Legendstrasse drew the biomass out of Mortz so quickly she was able to wrap a great glob of flesh around her fist and slam it into Barros as he ran at her. Barros was thrown against the wall, and Legendstrasse turned to face Lysander. Lysander barreled into her at full tilt, shield raised in front of him. There was no room for finesse now, not against an enemy like Legendstrasse, who was sprouting new weapons with every second. Spikes slid from her heels and rooted her in the ground. Her new height of muscle met Lysander's momentum and held him fast. The two wrestled, each trying to get the other off their feet. Legendstrasse's fatigues bulged and tore as new muscle wrapped around her arms and upper torso, and Lysander caught a glimpse of the young waiting to hatch from the egg sacs under her skin. "Heretic!" yelled Barros. He ran at Legendstrasse, drawing back his claw to swipe at her. The claw tore through her. 4 deep slashes opened up at Legendstrasse's swollen torso, but her organs reformed around the wounds, and Barros's momentum carried him right into the spike of bone she thrust her elbow out at him. Barros was speared through the face pit. He died a couple of meters from Lysander, and Lysander could do nothing. If he moved to save his brother, Legendstrasse would have dragged him down to the ground and probably disemboweled him, as she had done Brother Mortz. Lysander had 1,000 oaths he wanted to spit at Legendstrasse at that moment, but there were no words. It was all he could do to match strength with Legendstrasse. Barrows slid to the ground. The bone spike had become a bony syringe that sucked the blood and flesh from inside Barros's armor. Lysander felt the weight on him grow as Barros's biomass was added to Legendstrasse. He could not hold her. New limbs were splitting off from her legs and lower torso to grab his legs and throw him off the ground. He dropped to one knee and ducked back, letting her surge towards him. He slammed the shield to the side of her head. He brought the fist of Dorn round to follow up a blow to her ribcage, but she crashed down on him, smothering and crushing. Lysander has his shield over him, and used it to leverage Legendstrasse off him. Already, she was much bigger than him, new organs pulsing in her ribcage swollen too far for her skin to cover it. The spurs of bone wrapped with muscle that heaved as she drew in oxygen. A bone spike hammered down, shattering the mosaic by Lysander's head. He had enough room to roll out from underneath her. "Every brother I lose," gasped Lysander, "I will avenge 10 times on you." "You wrap your sacrifices in lies of revenge," said Legendstrasse. Her face was still human, surrounded by bulging masses of muscle, obscene by its very humanity. So desperate to deny what you are." A bladed whip-like limb snaked towards him. Lysander slammed the edge of his shield down on it and severed it. It whipped uselessly around his feet. It was a feint. 3 more lashed at him and caught him around the hammer arm and leg. Another caught him around the neck. Legistrasa fought to reel Lysander in, but Lysander dropped to a low crouch, dug his feet in, and refused to budge. Legistrasa spun and whipped Lysander around, picking him up as she turned. The whip let go, and Lysander was hurtling through the air, across the library, through the stained glass window. The grey labyrinth of Kazeo whirled around him as he fell. Ukulgan reached the blade out of the bloodletter's neck. The demon's boiling blood hissed as it seethed into the lake of salt tears. Above, broken bodies swayed, hacked and torn by the fury of blades beneath them. Ukulgan's twin hearts hammered. His body was being pushed to its limit. The demons were fast and strong, and they attacked relentlessly, heedless of anything but bloodshed. The shadow that fell over him was of a space marine, like him but not like him. Its armor was a fused nightmare, bullet and blade marks piled on top of another, until it resembled a mass of metallic scar tissue. It glowed from inside, and light bled from the cracks around its joints and vents. Vials of liquid were hooked to the corroded helm. The faceplate melded with the face of the space marine inside it, so cracked and distorted as he spoke. "The last one of you I fought," the traitor marine said. "It was upon the battlements of Terra. I broke his back and watched him squirm at my feet. I threw him from the walls, and he was torn apart by demons. It was a good death. I would taste it again." "And the last time you fought, my kind," said Okugan, dropping his obsidian sword to the water to wash off the gore, "we cast you from Terra and chased you into the warp. You have hidden from us for 10,000 years. My task is to remind you why." Karnakal's six-figure laughed as he lunged at Ukugan. Karnakal's weapon was a chainsword of ancient mark, its teeth bent and tarnished. It was alive, and it was hungry. Ukugan caught the blade with his own. Sparks sprang off the obsidian edge. The blade chewed into Ukugan's shoulder pad, throwing chunks of ceramite. Ukugan kicked Karnakal in the midriff and threw him off. The two stumbled to keep their footing in the lake of tears. "Hiding," said Karnakal. "I took 1,000 skulls on Belian Minor. I martyred St. Elysius when I tore out her throat. These bones around my neck are the fingers of Captain Cryos, of the White Consuls, and they were all I had left of him to take. I never hid from anything. I am a world eater. I am death given form." He lunged again, but this time Ukugan was ready. He ducked the blow, spun and drew the blade across the world eater's midriff. The obsidian blade cut through the corroded ceramite. A spray of molten metal spurted from the wound, and Karnakal bellowed as he dropped to one knee. "You are strong," said Ukugan. "You are quick, but you are angry too. You cannot control it, and you cannot wield a blade if you cannot even control yourself." Karnakal turned and charged. His sword wasn't the weapon this time. He crashed shoulder first into Ukugan and slammed him into the wall of the chamber. Bodies fell, shaken from their meat hooks. Karnakal grabbed Ukugan around the throat and forced him down into the water. "Control?" the world eater snarled. "Control is what cages you. Obedience makes you weak. Chaos makes me strong." Ukugan planted a foot and pushed himself backwards. The wall behind him came apart under his weight, and he rolled through the chamber beyond the waist-high tiers flowing around him. He was surrounded by towering columns of bone, thousands and thousands of skeletons, some forming the great shaft of the room he had fallen into, others piled up around him in bleached white drifts. Ukugan rolled to his feet. Karnakal stalked through the hole Ukugan had left in the wall, crunching to the deep piles of bone. "Did you make an oath to kill me, Imperial Fist? I made an oath to kill you all. An oath for my death? I collect them. I shall add yours to my own skull pile at the foot of Korn's throne. Each head, a soul of a man sworn to kill me." Karnakal's chain blade howled and snarled. It seemed ready to jump from his hand and feast. Ukugan used the second before Karnakal got to him. He forced everything inside, his thoughts, his senses, the pounding of his heart, the straining of his lungs, The Emperor's champion was not just an expert swordsman. He could take all the battles he fought, all the lives he had taken, and all the brothers he had seen fall, and turn it all inside. A single breath, and he was focused. The bone chamber was thrown into impossibly high relief. Chronicle's armor was picked out in every detail. He moved slowly, as if recording, played back on a hollow, so Ukugan could dissect his fighting style. Every one of Ukugan's senses was enhanced to its maximum, and there was nothing in the world except for Ukugan, his enemy, and his sword. If he died, it did not matter, because he would die fulfilling his duty to Royal Dorn, to the Emperor, to the human race. Carnical reached Ukugan. He drove the point of a snarling chainsword towards Ukugan's throat. Ukugan told him it did not matter if he died, and brought the obsidian blade up to meet it. Lysander shook the darkness out of his mind. The wind and rain were lashing at him. He was outside the cacophonous tower. He had come to rest on a balcony, seemingly torn from an imperial church, and absorbed by the predatory tower. It was from a balcony like this that a confessor might demand supplication from a crowd of the faithful, or a cardinal bless an army before it went to war. Now it jutted from the cacophonous tower like a half-pulled tooth. Lysander was a hole in the wall, almost as wide as the balcony itself, looking to a tangle of fallen columns that resembled the inside of a shattered ribcage. Gutted books and pages littered the floor. Prayer books, defiled and discarded from their sacredness that bleed out in the stones. Black veins pulsed from the surface of the uneven flagstones, as if the tower was alive, sustained by stolen holiness. A huge shape shouldered its way past one of the pillars. It resembled an Ogren, one of oversized humans the Imperial Guard used as shock troops or manual laborers. But this one was deformed by the shapes of faces and bodies straining against its skin, so the bulk of its corpulent form seemed composed of captives trapped inside it. "The penitent," said Lysander, getting to his feet. He was battered, and his fused ribcage felt cracked. His artificial skin was not holding up well, and he felt the blood filling sections of his armor. But he could still fight. "I heard tell of you from the guardsmen in the field. They understand your foulness." The multi-legged shape of Legendstrasse dropped from the ceiling. She must have been waiting there, splayed across the ceiling like a spider in wait. The penitent turned to look at her, bowing its great head. Legendstrasse impaled the penitent with a pair of limb blades. She dragged the ogre in close, and her torso split open, dragging the penitent inside. Teeth slid out from the gory edges of her body and sliced the penitent into pieces, each chunk swallowed up into her body. With more biomass she grew. She was quadrupedal now. Her lower limbs split to stampede and trample. Her torso now had 4 arms, 2 with clawed digits, 2 with blades, and her body had sheets of grisly armor that slid up to protect her head, leaving just enough room to see through. "They never should have made you. Better the Assassinorium's targets live than mankind should be so perverted in you." "Do not speak to me of the desecration of humanity," replied Legendstrasse. Her voice was that of a woman, unchanged by her altered form. "You have 2 hearts and 3 lungs. You can eat the flesh of an enemy and know their thoughts. Of the 2 of us, Space Marine, I am more human. I will bring new life in the galaxy. You will only destroy it." "We were only created to kill," said Lysander. "The difference is, you can only kill alone." The roar of the engines heralded the gilded pyre as the Thunderhawk hovered over the balcony. Through the windshield, Brother Gorgithian was almost hidden behind the targeting runes converging. Legendstrasse dived to one side. The heavy bolters mounted in the Thunderhawk's nose hammered a cannonade through the chamber, rattling over Lysander's head. Columns were severed and fell like trees. Explosive bolts blasted chunks out of the walls and ceiling. Legendstrasse ran, One of her legs was blasted off, a hefty meat slab, reduced to a shattered bone and pulp. She leapt to one wall and climbed faster than a man could run, gunfire chasing her through the ceiling, between the dense pillars towards the back of the room. Legendstrasse was out of sight. Lysander saw the Thunderhawk pivoting on its landing jets. Out of the side of the gunship, through a hatch where another heavy bolter was normally mounted, hung Agent Skulk. The Vindicator was loading one of his specialist bullets to his Exodus long rifle, waiting for the Thunderhawk to get in position for Legendstrasse to show herself. Hit her in the head. It's the only part she can't change. Everything else she can do without. The head, came Skulk's emotionless reply, and Legendstrasse dived from the jumble of columns, all flying talons and fangs. A round streaked into her. It blasted a chunk out of her chitinous collar, throwing fragments of shrapnel into her face. For the first time, the human part of her bled. Legendstrasse ran at Lysander, who rolled out of the way, just in time to realize she wasn't headed for him. She raced towards the balcony, and the Thunderhawk gunship hovering above it. Blood ran down her cheek as she bared her teeth and leapt at the gunship. Skulk's second shot missed her face by a centimeter. It streaked down into her shoulder, blasting a gory tunnel through her body and detonating at the root of her back leg, blasting it off in a shower of blood and bone. Anything else would have died on the spot. Legendstrasse crashed to the side of the Thunderhawk. Agent Skulk disappeared in a flurry of bone and fang. The Gilded Pyre tipped to one side with the additional weight, and Golgothian gunned the thruster to the side to compensate. Legendstrasse ripped the wing off the Thunderhawk. Burning fuel sprayed, the thruster exploded, and the Thunderhawk flipped over. Lysander saw the gunship would spin over the balcony and into the chamber. He ran away from the tide of heat and noise rushing towards him. He felt the Thunderhawk crashing to the side of the opening, the crunching explosions, as the rear fuel cells blew and its tail was sheared off. The hull followed in, spewing fire, and slammed into the floor. The floor split and rose up, fractured as if by an earthquake. Lysander leapt for a pillar, but it was falling too, uprooted by the force of the impact. Fire was everywhere. It flowed around Lysander like water flooding in, and he was falling, sliding down the shattered section of the floor, into the depths of the cacophonous tower. Everything was noise and the raging heat, battering against him, with ammunition cooking off in the blaze and peppering the stone with rogue shots. He was Roigel Dorn in the battlements of Terra. He was Sigismund, diving into the galaxy full of Xenos and heresy. He was Cortez on Rin's world. Both hearts, all but exhausted, battling for days, on a rampart of the dying and the dead. He was every Imperial fist who should have given up but didn't know how, and in that moment, he went beyond death to fight on. Lysander felt the heat all around him, sinking into it. It was not burning fuel. It was the very root of the cacophonous tower, where the temple to chaos met the living rock of Opus, where the tormented architecture met the molten rock welling through the shattered crust. It was instinct, not any understanding of the surroundings, that forced Lysander to drag him out of the sucking, burning mire. His hand felt a ridge of stone, and he hauled himself to it, even as the ceramite of his greaves began to give way under the heat and pressure. He wiped the dirt and debris from his eyes. The bubbling pit of lava was pierced by the pillars of the temple. Statues of intertwined bodies rose from the fire. The bones of demons broke the surface here and there. The elongated fanged skeletons of a bloodletter, the twisted skeleton of a shape-shifting demon, forced to a single form in the moment of death. The air was scalding to breathe. Lysander's throat was blistered with the heat. The haft of the fist of Dorn protruded from the lava. His shield was nowhere to be seen. The wreck of the Gilded Pyre slid through the shattered ceiling, a burning mass of metal that crunched into a slab of stone that broke the lava's surface. Legendstrasse, her form battered and bleeding from 100 wounds, crawled from a fallen bridge of stone towards a relatively stable expanse of flooring where Lysander had landed. She was hurt. But even as Lysander watched her drag herself along, her legs reformed under her. Lysander got to his feet. The stone under him tilted with his movement. The whole cacophonous tower seemed to be sinking slowly to the burning mire. Lysander jumped across a chunk of shattered stone, a short leap away from what remained of the Gilded Pyre. He could see nothing of Agent Skull or Brother Gorgithian. Most of the passenger compartment was intact, albeit on fire. Lysander! Yelled Legendstrasse above the bubbling lava. Can you hear it? The bells were tolling. The sound mixed into terrible echoing peals that reached down through the whole tower. A sound that echoed into the warp, that bridged the gap between two universes. Lysander leaned across and jumped at the mass of fallen masonry on which the gunship had come to rest. He realized the moment that one of his hips had probably become dislocated, shots of pain running up the side of his body. Lysander heard. Shards of bone were loose somewhere in his chest. In the burning mass above him was a cabinet of black metal, held in place with clamps that secured the side of the compartment. Legendstrasse's upper limbs were growing by the second, bladed fingers unfolding and reaching across the lava for Lysander. The muscle and bone were charring in the heat. Legendstrasse's face didn't register any pain. There was a look of determination, as if Lysander was one final thread to be cut before she could clamber back up the tower through the portal opening in the sky overhead. The blade of bone speared through the back of Lysander's leg. He ripped his leg free, feeling the bone and muscle come apart inside. His armor was pumping him full of pain suppressants, but they could not take it all away, and they would run out. He dragged himself into the gilded pyre. The searing metal told him all he could feel. His nervous system was still working. He still had control. He could still fight. Another meter. The cabinet and the burning Thunderhawk was within reach. Lysander unbuckled the clamp restraints, and the cabinet slid past him, clattering to the stone. Legendstrasse leapt and slammed into one of the statues looming over the lava. She was almost reformed now, her limbs shedding flakes of scorched muscle to reveal new wet growth underneath. Lysander crawled out of the wreck and hauled the cabinet right side up. Freezing vapor was bleeding from its seals. He slammed a fist at the activation room of its control panel. The cabinet slid open. A cloud of vapor rushed out as freezing air inside met the heating pulse of the lava. From the vapor rose a figure, its face concealed by a skull mask, wearing a synth-skin bodysuit. It wore a silver-bladed gauntlet in one hand and a rig fitted with combat drug dispensers on its shoulders. The Averser assassin shrieked as it rose from the cryo cabinet that had held it inside since the Assassinorian built their facility on the Rekabin Juggle. The sockets of the skull mask fixed on Legendstrasse, clambering overhead, and the dispensers pumped his body full of combat drugs. Muscles and veins ripped under the synth skin. The Averser surged in the cabinet from the cabinet and leapt up onto the statue that Legendstrasse was climbing. With supernatural agility, he scrambled after Legendstrasse, drawing an elaborate pistol from a holster on his back. It was Lysander's last gambit. The Averser the Imperial Fist had discovered in the jungle facility, brought with him on the gilded pyre, and the knowledge that the assassin might land the killing blow if the Imperial Fist failed. Legendstrasse was the last target the Averser had been given, and even an Averser, when an Averser had a target, it sought to kill it out, and it killed the exclusion of everything else. Legendstrasse saw the Averser as it took aim at her. If there was shock at seeing a fellow assassin here, she did not let it slow her down. She brought up a chitinous shield as she fired a spray of silvery darts. Flesh blackened and fell away as neurotoxins flowed. Legendstrasse swept a scythe-like bony blade down at the Averser. The Averser leapt, kicking off a protrusion of stone, and powered into Legendstrasse's central mass. The two assassins were evenly matched. They had trained in the same methods of death, before the same masters. They had butchered the same combat servitors and memorized the same treatises on murder. Each slash of the Averser's gauntlet met a parry of bony blade. Every lashing tendril from Legendstrasse was avoided and cut off. Another movement caught Lysander's eye. Through the rippling heat haze, the huge smoldering shape of Carnical's Six-Finger walked through the broken staircase. Over his shoulder was hung the body of the Emperor's champion, Ukugon. "Brother!" shouted Lysander. "Traitor! Blasphemy! You have killed my battle brother!" Ukugon's helmet was split down the face, encrusted with dried blood. The wound carved down through one shoulder pad, and out through his back. "He fought like the warp was in him," growled Carnical. But it was with me. My gods watch. My gods intervene. Yours sit on his throne and does nothing. Lysander walked towards Carnical. For the moment, letting the two assassins fight, Carnical was smiling. I will join the Emperor at the end of time, said Lysander, and at his side we will cleanse all that remains of filth like you from every level of reality. The warp will be scoured blank. Your gods will shrivel and die. You will watch, and you will know despair, to repay what you have done to my brother. Carnical laughed. He shrugged Ukugan's body off his shoulders. The hilt of Ukugan's obsidian blade protruded from Carnical's chest. Carnical sank to one knee, and Lysander saw the point of the blade protruding from Carnical's back. There is another life, gasped Carnical. I will die 1,000 times. I will find you. Every Imperial Fist, I will find you. On the statue above, the Aversor and the Marius were wrestling, each with matching blows struck by the other. The Aversor's skin was torn. Deep wounds were open across his ribcage. Several limbs fell from Legendstrasse and withered as they sank to the lava. A claw snickered out and sliced off the Aversor's gun hand. His pistol landed in the lava and disappeared. A second claw punched into the Aversor's stomach and tore out a welter of entrails. Lysander ran to the dying form of Carnical. He tore the obsidian blade out of the traitor's body and drew it back just like a javelin. The Aversor was dying, though he did not know it yet. He was all but disemboweled. Legendstrasse snared his claw hand and sliced off his arm with a bone scythe. The Aversor's blood splattered up against Legendstrasse's too-human face, and another blade speared through his throat, twisted and tore out another spray of blood. Lysander fought against the agents of the Officio Assassinorum before. He knew what an Aversor assassin was, and what it had been created to do. It was designed to kill, and nothing else. Even in death, it did its duty. Lysander hurled the blade. It speared through the air and punched into the dying Aversor's back. The blade passed right into Legendstrasse, lodging it in the tough, fibrous matter she had grown to shield her. The Aversor was pinned to Legendstrasse, as every dispenser in the Aversor's combat rig emptied into his veins. Legendstrasse knew what the Aversor could do, too, and she grew new limbs to try to force the Aversor off her and wrench out the obsidian blade. She pulled the blade halfway out. Then the Aversor put its head back and howled, forcing the last of the air from its shredded lungs. Legendstrasse was a second too late. The volatile mix of chemicals in the Aversor's body reached the point where his veins and heart could not contain it. It was a final act of spite. The Aversor exploded in a bio-meltdown of orange flame and venom. Lysander dived to one side as the burning form of Legendstrasse slammed to the side of the flooring. The stone immediately began to sink, the lava creeping further over its surface. Legendstrasse was alive. Her chitinous armor had been blasted away. Her attacking limbs reduced to charred and splintered bone. Her face had been spared the worst. The obsidian blade still protruded from a central mass, where the burnt organs pulsed and bled. Lysander tore the blade from her. He reached over the lava and grabbed the haft of the Fist of Dorn, pulling it out of the molten rock. Its head glowed brightly in the heat, but the exotic alloys of its construction it held intact. Its power field leapt back to life as it came free of the lava. "You die, abomination," said Lysander. "Not knowing what a blessing death is. You die not knowing what I do for you." For the first time, Legendstrasse's face showed fear. Her eyes opened and she screamed. Lysander swung the obsidian blade at her. It sliced through her neck and cut her head clean off, and it tumbled through the air. Red tendrils of nerve fiber and muscle lashed out from around her head, seeking out the body. Lysander swung the Fist of Dorn on his other hand. The hammer slammed into Legendstrasse's head. It was propelled across the chamber, smacking wetly to the side of the statue in which she and the Aversor had fought. Lysander watched as the head rolled down the statue, the same fear and shock on her face, until its skin blackened in the heat and her hair caught fire. A few seconds later, the head touched the surface of the lava. A few more and it was gone, turned to ash and swallowed up. Lysander turned to the charred, broken hulk of Legendstrasse's body. Her young still squirmed in the sacks bundled inside her enormous torso. Lysander put a shoulder against the corpse, and he pushed, and felt it tip over to the lava. It did not take long for the body to be wreathed in flames and disappear. Lysander limped on his wounded leg to where Legend Strauss's corpse lay beside that of Carnical. He picked up Ukugan's body and threw it over his shoulder. "Forgive me, brother, that you fell under my command," said Lysander. "But by your own hand you are avenged. Your duty was done, my brother. Your duty was done." The shattered staircase led towards the upper levels of the cacophonous tower. Lysander could hear the gunfire from above as the rest of the Imperial Fist strike force fended off the demons native to the place. Lysander ascended from the pit of fire. The tolling bells quieted and fell silent. The trophy hall of the Wings of Dorn was not yet adorned with anything taken from Opus. Perhaps the head of Antiocha Wyrax would find its way there. It was ever released by Chekhopov's intelligence corps, or a segment of Carnical's armor. Those were decisions yet to be made. There were still fallen brothers to be honored, their gene seed extracted and their war gear reconsecrated for the recruits who would follow them into the Imperial Fist ranks. Sarek looked with curiosity at the head of an alien creature that hung on the wall, one of the many trophies taken from the defeated Xenos. It hung along crystalline blades and strange firearms of polished stone. Its skull was elongated and played with bony scales, and it had 6 eye pits arranged along its mandibled face. "I saw these in the flesh," she said, "clinging to our ship. I had not known the Imperium had encountered them before. Ketrips named them Cryptoxenos Ferox Terratum. He tried to get a sample to dissect them, but it was lost to the void." "We call them glass fangs," said Lysander. "The inhabitants of a feral world polished their bones and read fortunes from their reflections. They were destroyed." Sarek looked at Lysander. It was strange to see him out of his armor. He had removed it so he could be attending the ship's apothecarium. One leg was bandaged and braced. His face still recovering, a new sheet of shiny artificial skin stretched across the side of his head. He wore the monastic robes of a space marine away from the battlefield. "The aliens," said Sarek, "or the natives." "Both," said Lysander. "It was a world beyond hope." "The Imperial war machine will decide that," said Lysander. "There are still moral threats and civilians down there. The Imperial Fists have no further part to play in the fate of either." "Have you decided," said Sarek, "what you'll do with me?" "I keep my word," said Lysander. "An inquisitorial fortress stands between us and our return to the Phalanx. You will be dropped off there. They need to hear what happened to Ketrips. And Lady Sarek, I have one further task to request of you. It will cause you no risk and no great labor." Sarek considered this for a moment. "I owe you my life, Captain Lysander. One more favor should not use up all my goodwill." "You are in a better position than us," said Lysander, "to deliver a message." "To whom?" "To the official Assassinorum." Sarek raised an eyebrow. "I see. That should not be beyond my capabilities. What do you want to say to our Assassinorum cousins?" "That they have made a new enemy in the Imperial Fist," said Lysander. "I have heard it said by Space Marines of other chapters that when the Adeptus Terra wills it, the Imperial Fist will act. That we are lapdogs of Earth. But the official Assassinorum has used us to wage a war of their making, against an enemy they created, to cover up the mistakes of their own past, and that is a wrong that cannot be forgiven. When next we cross paths, it will not be on friendly terms, and if the Assassinorum has more secrets, like the Morris Temple, I shall see to it they are rooted out. Such corruption cannot be permitted to exist at the heart of the Imperium. Tell them they can hide no longer, and that one day Lysander and the Imperial Fist will drag their secrets into the light." "Do you believe," said Sarek, "that the Imperial Fist do not have enough enemies? That you go out of your way to make another one?" "It was the Assassinorum who shot Ketrips," said Lysander. "Do not pretend to me you do not have your own grudge against them too." "Perhaps that is true," said Sarek. "I will keep my own motives to myself, but I will do as you ask. The Inquisition and the Assassinorum work often enough together. I have certain contacts. Your message will be delivered." "My thanks," said Lysander. "Now I have the funeral rites of my brothers to oversee. Opus has claimed too many lives." Lysander left Sarek inspecting the skulls and captured weapons of the trophy hall. He touched the pendant he now wore around his neck, the bullet that killed Inquisitor Ketrips. Once, he had known no limit to the sacrifices that should be made to the pursuit of victory. Life and death, right and wrong, even honor, the very identity of a space marine, could be abandoned if that was what it took to secure victory. But now he knew. The Assassinorum had showed him that. There was a limit. He thought he had taken the head of Legendstrasse. Too much had been paid by the Assassinorum to give him the chance. Perhaps he had always been searching for the answer to the question of how far he was too far when seeking victory. Now he had that answer. He closed his eyes, felt the cold metal of the bullet in his hand, and prayed to Dorn and the Emperor that he would never have to approach that decision himself. Outside the wings of Dorn, the great orb of Opus turned, and a million Imperial Guard marched across its cities.